Welcome back to the channel. In this video we will look at sine, which relates the size of an angle to the lengths of two sides in a right angled triangle. So let's start with a right angled triangle. And suppose that the hypotenuse has length 8 centimeters. Now the hypotenuse is opposite the right angle. And let's say that the angle is 35 degrees. And supposing we want to find the length x there. Now x is in fact the opposite, because we can see it's opposite the 35-degree angle. Now, by the definition of sine, we have sine of 35 degrees is equal to the opposite over the hypotenuse. And in this case, that is x over 8. Now, how do we find the value of x? Well, we need to multiply both sides by 8, or we can say cross multiply. If we do that, we get x is equal to 8 multiplied by sine 35 degrees. And now we can look up sine 35 degrees on a calculator. If we do that, we get this line. And now multiplying those figures together, we get x is equal to 4.589 centimeters. And I've corrected that to 4 significant figures. Now let's do a similar problem, but this time we'll have the triangle in a different orientation. Again, we've got a right angle. So let's say the hypotenuse here is of length 11 centimeters, and the angle is 42 degrees. Now we want to find the value of x there. And x is again the opposite because it's opposite the 42-degree angle. So let's write down the definition of sine. Sine of 42 degrees is the opposite over the hypotenuse. And in this case, that will be x over 11. Now, again, we need to find the value of x. So to do that, we will multiply both sides by 11, or we can say cross multiply. When we do that, we get x is equal to 11 multiplied by sine 42 degrees. And as before, we can look up sine 42 degrees on a calculator. And when we do that, we get these figures. And again, multiplying those together on a calculator, we get 7.360 centimeters, again correct to 4 significant figures. Now let's try a slightly different problem. Here, again, we've got a right angled triangle, but this time we know the opposite, and it's of length 9 centimeters. And here, well, first of all, the angle is 34 degrees, but we want to calculate the hypotenuse. So this time we'll call the hypotenuse x. So what should we do here? Well, we simply proceed in the same manner. So write down the definition of sine, which is sine 34 degrees is opposite over hypotenuse. And here that will be 9 over x. So how do we find x now? Well, here we need to multiply both sides by x to clear away the fraction. Or we can say cross multiply. And we get x multiplied by sine 34 degrees is equal to 9. Now, to find the value of x, simply divide both sides by sine 34 degrees. So we get this, and looking up sine 34 degrees on a calculator and doing that division on the calculator, we get x is 16.09 centimeters. Again, correct to 4 significant figures. Let's do a similar problem, but with the triangle in this orientation. So of course we've got a right angle, and here we have the length is 10 centimeters, and that's opposite the angle of 57 degrees. And we want to find x here, which is the hypotenuse. A hypotenuse again being opposite the right angle. So again, we write down the definition of sine, which in this case will be sine 57 degrees is equal to the opposite over the hypotenuse. And here that will be 10 over x. As last time, to find x, we multiply both sides by x, or cross multiply, it's the same thing. And we get x multiplied by sine 57 degrees is equal to 10. And now, to get x on its own, divide both sides by sine 57. So we get this, and looking up sine 57 degrees on a calculator, we get these figures, and doing that division on the calculator, we get x is 11.92 centimeters. And again, I've corrected that to 4 significant figures. Okay, now let's try a slightly different problem. Here, again, we start with the right angled triangle, but this time we know the opposite length is 7 centimeters, and we also know the hypotenuse. It is 9.5 centimeters. And we want to find this angle. We'll call it theta. Now, what should we do here? Well, it's simply the same thing. So we write down the definition of sine, which here will be sine theta is equal to opposite over hypotenuse. And those lengths are 7 and 9.5. So if we do that division, 7 divided by 9.5 on a calculator, we get this figure, 0.7368 something. Now we need to find the value of theta. So how should we do that? Well, we call that sine to the minus 1 of the value, and to calculate it, put the 0.7368, etc., into the calculator. And then press the sine to the minus 1 key on the calculator. Or it could be called arc sin. If you do that, you should get the figure of 47.46 degrees on the calculator, or something equivalent to that. I've corrected the figure to 4 significant figures. Let's look at a similar problem, but again with a triangle in some other orientation. So here we have the opposite 6.5 centimeters being opposite the, and the hypotenuse 11 centimeters, opposite the right angle. And the opposite 6.5 centimeters is opposite an angle of theta. So again, we write, to find the size of the angle theta, we write down the definition of sine, which here will be sine theta is opposite over hypotenuse, which will be 6.5 divided by 11. Now we divide the 6.5 by 11 on a calculator, and we get this figure. Now again, to find theta, we can write it like that, and to actually find the value of theta on the calculator, we put this 0.590909, etc., into the calculator screen. And we press the sine to the minus 1 or arc sine key. When we do that, we will get 36.22 degrees. Well, I've corrected it to 4 significant figures. You will get a longer answer, which when corrected gives 36.22. So that's all for this video. So I hope you've understood what you've seen, and So thank you very much for watching. And please remember to subscribe to the channel. Now, I have a website where you can get unlimited practice in solving problems of this kind. And in fact, the questions will keep generating until you answer a certain number of questions correctly, a certain number of consecutive questions correctly. There's also a test on the site, and there you can test yourself on the subject. And again, you need to answer 5 consecutive questions correctly to complete the test. If you manage to do that, then you've got a good grasp of sine here. So thank you very much, and I'll see you in the next video.